Kevin, after you left Jack, you bounced around between Cup and Bush and Nationwide and whatever. What was that time like for you personally? Was there ever a point in there where you said, you know what, I'm going back to Vermont? It's just not worth the headache.
Going back to Vermont was never in my vocabulary.
Okay.
When I left Roush, went to Kodak, turned that team around after half a dozen races. Robbie Gordon started the season, and then we had some really good success. Then all of a sudden, I think early the following year, I get canned, and they brought Spencer in, I think it was, or Skinner or somebody. And then that relationship didn't work out, and then they got me back for a second ride. Jerry McClure told me, he goes, I just want to tell you, he says, we made a huge mistake. And I said, what's that? He says, by firing you the first time. He says, go back and look at our record. He says, you're the only one that has qualified a car as well as it has and raced as well as it has. And then we went to Bristol, and that weekend I was up at the shop talking with Larry. He goes, what do we need to do? I was like, look, I said, Tim Brewer, now who was the crew chief at the time, I said, Tim Brewer is probably one, if not the best race caller I've ever worked with. But getting from point A to point B doesn't work. I said, we'd be out there and I'd say, car's tight. Well, what do you think we ought to do? Car's loose. Well, what do you think? Yeah, that's exactly what I would do. Well, I'm not the crew chief. You hired me to drive. So Larry said, well, what do you think we ought to do? I said, honestly, I know some guys that are great car chiefs or potential car chiefs down in Charlotte that would love to come up here and work for you guys and work underneath Tim and bring that knowledge that Charlotte has to Abington. He goes, all right. He said, let's talk about it. I said, all right. So we go to the race. I cut a tire down early in the race and made probably the same mistake that most drivers do. I drove around to the whatever front straightaway, back straightaway our pit stall was instead of diving right in on that. So I lost 2 laps. So then under caution, crew's talking to me. And I'm going back to them, and they're not hearing me. And so I come down pit road, and we end up losing another lap on the caution. And I look over, and I've never seen it in my life. And people wouldn't believe me today if I tell them, but we had 2 radios, and the radio wires somehow melted together. And so I ended up sliding my hand up through the radio wires, and I got one radio to work. Well, by that time, we're 3 laps down. Never lost another lap that day, but we're 3 laps down and finished like 20-something, you know. Well, you know how Larry is. Bristol is this big racetrack, and, you know, we needed to do good. Well, Monday morning, I get a phone call from Larry, and he said, you know, after talking with Tim and I think we've decided that we're going to go a different direction.
This is the second time.
This second time.
Okay. All right.
Well, I'm sure Larry went to Tim and said, hey, look, Kevin wants to bring somebody in here. Well, Tim got worried. So he figured what's the best thing to do? Fire the driver and keep my job. So they struggled, you know, for a couple years. And all of a sudden I get this phone call one day, and this guy was starting a new team. And they wanted Tim Brewer to be the crew chief general manager. And without saying so many words over the network, I said I wouldn't hire him if he was the last guy on the face of the earth. And I told him why. About 20 minutes later, my phone rang, and it was Tim Brewer.
How'd that conversation go?
Well, I didn't answer it because I knew it was him. And his message was something I can't repeat, but he wanted to beat my butt, and we haven't spoken since. But we went from Morgan McClure. We went to Jim Smith's car with the Seven Nation rent car. Mike Wallace was floundering around again, and I got in there and stepped it up. Had stupid things fall off the car, wheel spacer screws back off, loosen a wheel, just dumb stuff, but we had fast forwards. And all of a sudden I get fired and they put Jimmy Spencer in the car. It seemed like between Spencer and Skinner and myself, we played the roulette wheel. Then my biggest break, and I was close, so close, was driving for Evernham when he had the 9 and the 19. Casey was really, really struggling. And so Ray called me and he goes, "We're going to Atlanta." He says, "I want you to come to the shop, and I want you to sit in the car, and we're going to do a driver swap during practice." So I go up to the shop. We change the seat belts because obviously Casey's shorter than me. We adjust the steering wheel. We took all these measurements. So when I got to the racetrack at Atlanta, I wasn't driving down there. I was just going down there to be a relief driver. Ray gave me a radio. They brought, the truck driver brought me a radio, and Ray gave me the code after the first practice, second practice, to go over because the car would be ready. Well, all of a sudden, they start doing this changeover, and Casey's looking at what's going on. Next thing you know, I walk over. And Casey's watching to see if we put tires on or not. Well, I didn't. I put the same tires on. They left the same tires on. They just, all they wanted me to do was go out and do a 2-lap qualifying run. I was 6/10 quicker. So I got out of the car. Casey got in the car. I went back out. He was horrible. So Ray called me Monday and he goes, "I want you to come to Rockingham." He says, "I think Casey will be done." Well, they ended up having a big court battle, and Ray couldn't get rid of Casey that easy. And I don't know the whole detail, but I went down to Rockingham for nothing, but and then I don't know what happened the following year, why I didn't get an opportunity, But, we started with, a bunch of new startup teams and was known as a start park driver.
Kevin, this is a hard question to ask, but 2008 Talladega race, what happened?
That's the 61 car you're talking about?
Yeah.
That's the $1 million question that everybody seems to think they know the answer, but they don't. I've been down here since 1994. So what's that, 14 years?
Yeah.
Up to that point. Every driver's meeting that you go to, regardless of what racetrack it is, NASCAR says, when you leave pit road, keep your left side tires on the yellow line. Blend on the backstretch.
Left side tires.
Left side tires.
Okay.
So that day, in the driver's meeting, Joe Ballas says, when you leave pit road, keep your left side tires on the yellow line, blending on the backstretch. So we come down pit road to do our pit stop, and my wife's spotting, and she goes, "I'm leaving pit road." She goes, "Pack's off from 4. Remember, left side tires on the yellow line." I said, "Yeah, okay." So I take off. I'm going up through the gears. The next thing I know, I'm got run over, and there's shit flying all over the place, and there's a hell of a wreck. My car's killed. So
Well, I'm just going to ask about.
So I'm sitting there.
Yes, sir.
I'm sitting there, getting interviewed,
Yeah.
and I mean, my wife says to me, she goes, "What the hell did what was Carl Edwards doing going to the bottom?" And I'm sitting there getting interviewed, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell where his spotter was, because I'm on the bottom of the racetrack and 3 lanes of traffic had already gone by me. And next thing you know, I get run over by Carl Edwards, who was back there, and he dove to the bottom because the lane opened up. Spotter never once said anything about a slow car on the bottom of the racetrack. So Jerry Punch looks over at Dale Jarrett, they're both calling a race, and said, "What the hell happened? What was that all about?" NASCAR opens the door because their race control and TV is right next door, and they said, "This is what you're going to say." Kevin pulled out in front of the lead pack.
Now, how do you know that?
So Jerry looks over to Dale, and NASCAR said, "No, that ain't what happened." And he goes, "This is what you're going to say." So Sunday, in a driver's meeting, they said, "All right, guys, you need to keep 4 tires below the yellow line when you leave pit road." 26 drivers got busted for doing the same thing I did. Because those 26 drivers, Tony Stewart, Bobby Labonte, Rusty Wallace, whoever was in that race, the ones that got busted, had done it ever since they came down here. Those were the rules. Monday morning, Jerry calls me. Punch.
Yeah.
And he goes, "I want to apologize, Kevin, for embarrassing you on national TV." I said, I don't know what to say, Jerry. He goes, "I went back and got the tape from Joe Ballas, because we tape all the drivers' meeting. Joe Ballas said, 'Keep your left side tires below the yellow line.' Period."
Okay.
And he says, "NASCAR told me to tell it the way I said it on TV, and I did not want to do that." And after NASCAR walked out, even Dale said, "Kevin didn't do anything wrong." And they went back and listened to the tape, and Carl Edwards' spotter never said a word. So NASCAR calls me and said, "I need to make a national public apology to Carl Edwards and the rest of the field for wrecking everybody, or I wasn't going to race a race again." That's the truth. And I have actually have a friend, or supposedly friend, on Facebook and Twitter that has, every time my name comes up, he goes, "Oh yeah, he's the guy that wrecked the field," and I blocked him. And finally, he tried to message me a month ago to sit there and say, "I apologize. I didn't want to stir any stuff up." Well, people don't understand what happened. And last winter, I was over at the Hall of Fame, and one of the guys down there, a young kid, asked me the same question you just asked. "Why did I do it?" And I said, "I didn't wreck the field. Carl Edwards wrecked the field." And I explained the same thing I just said to you. And he goes, "That makes sense."
I don't know how to ask this next question, but did that follow you?
No. No. Doug Taylor was the owner of the 61 car. And he had a partner, Charlie Schaffner. And that year, and I think that year and a little bit maybe the following year, or whatever that whole year was, Doug was chasing money. That particular race at Talladega, Doug, we had just come back from Mexico City. We raced Mexico City and went to Talladega. Doug went to Texas and met with an investor down there to get some money to go racing, some more money. And when we went to Talladega, we didn't have a race motor in that car. We unloaded a car without a motor in it. NASCAR wouldn't even let us go through inspection. And finally, the guy wired the money over to our account, and Doug Yates had a motor down there in one of the trailers, and it came over to us. But throughout that year, the story I kept getting from Doug was, "We got money coming. We got money coming." And long story short, I went to Bob Jenkins, And I said, are you willing to take this program over? And so he met with Doug, and they said, sure, we'll sign the money over to Kevin, because there was the money came to Kevin for the drivers and the points, and we'll sign everything over. And Doug says, well, we need to still use my hauler till the end of the year, just to make NASCAR happy, blah, blah, blah. So Bob Jenkins and myself formed a deal where Bob would supply the cars, the motors, transmission, gears, and Doug would haul it. Bob paid all the bills. And at the end of the year, they were going to sign it over. Well, we went through 3 mediations between Doug and Charlie and Bob and myself. And the last mediation we had was, I think, the 21st of December. And Charlie walked out the room and says, I'm done. You'll have the deal. December 31st at 11:59, Charlie Schaffner filed personal bankruptcy in Georgia, which locked up all the assets, which included the race team. And we got nothing. Between Bob and I, there was probably over $500,000 owed to us. My salary, my motorhome expenses, my travel expenses, all that stuff, Bob's motor bills and stuff. And Doug kept racing the following year until they finally burned every bridge they could burn. And that was probably the hardest year that I ever had in racing, because I trusted both Charlie and Doug and ended up losing a bunch of money over the deal.
At what point did you decide to step away and get out of the seat?
I bounced around a few times between Jimmy Means, and Mike Harmon. And I raced, I think, the 2014 for Mike Harmon, most of the year, I think it was. Every race, I was supposed to get X amount of dollars. Sometimes we start and park, sometimes we raced. We went to California, and we had a fast Dodge. And we come down pit road, and I got like 2 guys over the wall, changing right side tires, left side tires, and gas in the car. We lost like 3 laps at California. And I said to Mike, where's our pit crew? Well, they didn't show. Well, no, he didn't want to pay. Right? We go to another racetrack, we're fast. Same deal. No pit crew, no tires, whatever the case may be. I'd go to the shop on Tuesday and say, you got my money from last week? I'll get it to you. Finally, at the end of 2014, I said to my wife, you know what? I've gone longer than I wanted to, because when I came down here in 94, my goal was to be 50. Well, if you go back to when you were in 1994, a 50-year-old man was an old guy. In 2014, a 50-year-old man's not as old he was back in, with health and, all that kind of stuff. So I went longer, and I think it was 53. And I said, I can't keep chasing money. Not that Mike never paid me. I mean, he paid me every dime that was owed to me. But it was just, if I had to wait for money, I'd sleep in a Motel 6. If I wasn't in a Motel 6, I had to wait for money, and it was just, I had a great ride. I met a lot of great people. I got some great stories, and made a lot of people happy throughout my career. From the Vermont Teddy Bear, giving bears away, to signing autographs. That was it. I had enough.
Now, what are you doing these days? I know that you've got the business here, but you have also taken up golf pretty seriously. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've always was a golfer. Okay. I grew up on a golf course when I was in Vermont, and I used to shag balls, caddy. I was a head greenskeeper before I went to college. When we came down here, there was almost every racetrack had a charity golf tournament, and I'd go play golf. So 4 years ago, my older brother was diagnosed with stomach cancer, and I turned 60, and a month later he was in the hospital, doing major surgery. And I said to my wife, I said, you know what? I said, there's this golf week tour, senior tour, amateur senior tour, and I said, you know what? I worked my butt off to make it a NASCAR. I've got a business, and if I can't take one day off a week or one day off every 2 weeks to go play golf, then I don't need to own a business. Because life's too short. You don't know what's going to happen. Knock on wood, my brother's doing great. And so I started it, and the first year I finished 14th out of I think there was 40 guys in the C flight. Second year I won 3 tournaments, won the C flight championship. Last year won 3 tournaments. Last year was probably my highlight year. I played 22 tournaments. I had 20 of them in the top 10, 19 of them in the top 5 with 3 wins in the championship. This year I stepped up to B flight. A couple 3 weeks ago, I was tied for second, 1 shot out of the lead on the first of 2 days. I ended up 6. When you move up to B flight, it's like moving up from the Truck Series to the Xfinity Series. You play against better golfers, better racers. It's a lot more challenging. The one thing that I do know from C flight to B flight, your mistakes are a lot less if you want to win. And I've enjoyed the competition. It keeps me sharp, keeps me in tuned, and I just I love it. I love the game of golf. My wife plays the game, so she's not real good at it, but she has some good holes and good days, and we try to play just about every week.
How would you like for race fans to remember Kevin Lepage?
The same way they're doing it today. Every week for the last 2 or 3 years, I get something in the mail for an autograph to sign. If it's 1 hero card or 3 baseball cards or a die cast. People, even till today, I go out to dinner and somebody will come up and want an autograph. To me, that means that I gave back and people respect me. I don't know if the generation of drivers today will ever have that experience, because I don't think their following is that big compared to mine. It's weird that no matter where I am in the United States, every now and then somebody will come up and say, "Aren't you the NASCAR driver?"
Yeah.
It happened the other day at UPS store, and I've been out of racing for, this will be 6 years. And so, to me, on a tombstone is, he never said no. And I think that lesson came from Richard Petty. Always sign autographs because one day you won't. And, I'm not going to say I didn't turn down autographs, because there was times that we'd signed for 2 hours and I probably could have signed for another 2 hours. But today, to see stuff come in the mail, it's pretty amazing that people still care about me.